Hey guys, this is Kirob speaking, and in today's Diablo 2 video we are going to talk about Runewords and their balance. This is a topic I wanted to touch upon for quite a while, and after my Countess run series, and especially part 3 which focused on the Runewords and their viabilities, I think now it is time to actually address that specific aspect, Runeword balance. And because I feel competent enough to talk only about early and early mid-game Runewords, I will start out with just early game Runewords and discuss their balance and what I think are nowadays in patch 1.14d solutions to problems that do not exist anymore and leave quite a few holes in there. As I spent a considerable amount of time in my day job as a designer and producer balancing our own game, which is really complex, and having hundreds and hundreds, or no, thousands of hours of single-player Diablo 2 experience, I think I have at least a basic grasp on what a good balance change would be and how to make the early gameplay of Diablo 2 in single player untwinked a better experience overall. Of course, I cannot implement any of these changes, but that's not the goal of this discussion. It is a discussion, and I would like you to post your view on various Runewords and my changes in the comment section below. But now, let's get started. First off, I would like to present to you a little overview. There are very few early game Runewords overall, and I have listed them all here and what kind of archetype they fall into as well, or what I would see their archetype as. And there we have our standard single-handed melee weapon Steel and Malice. Malice also doubles as a two-handed weapon Runeword pretty well. You can give it to your mercenary and it's really powerful. And then you have the ranged characters Runeword, which is Zephyr, and that's an excellent Runeword, very powerful, even brings you all the way through Mid-Nightmare if you want. Then we have a caster weapon, which is Leaf, and we have basically an armor which just is so phenomenally good that it can cover all three of the archetypes. That would be caster, ranged, and melee for an armor. Then we have the shield, which covers everything because, well, Ancient's Pledge is awesome. And then we have a really underpowered Runeword for mainly melee characters for helmets. And that's it. And I think that leaves some holes in there, which I have marked here by some question marks. And we shall now investigate how to best fix, in quotations, these Runewords to make them play better, not be overpowered, and still a viable option to go for if you really want. When reworking Runewords, we of course have to consider what kind of runes are available. We are mainly talking about Runewords that would be available by doing Countess runs, which nowadays I'm a little bit of an expert in, I guess, after so many runs and so much analysis. But anyway, yes, so these are the limited number of runes we have at our proposal to form Runewords, to change around Runewords, and that's not that many, is it? Alright. We start out with the first set of Runewords, which I just arbitrarily have designated as the Stealth Runeword, Leaf Runeword, Zephyr, and the Ancient's Pledge. And let's talk about Stealth first. It is actually such a good Runeword that there's basically no alternative to it. Neither rare items nor unique items. Maybe Twitch Throw for melee characters. That would be a pretty good one to start out with. But nothing else really comes close to it, which means that it is vastly overpowered and doesn't play well because it's the only option you have. The more options you have in Diablo, the better it is. Having options in general is what makes Diablo 2 interesting. If you limit the amount of options, that is basically removing all items from the game except one for that specific slot. And Diablo 2 is about finding items and adopting gear adjustments and all that kinds of stuff to your builds. So you would take the game out of the game if you make overpowered items. One thing we, for instance, see with some of the ladder Runewords for the high-end game. There is only really one option, like the insight for the mercenary. This is such a powerful Runeword that it eliminates the vast majority of, like, millions and millions of options. And that is probably not what this whole thing is designed to do. But anyway, let's get back to simpler things, and that will be stealth. It is overpowered, and I can point to what seems the most overpowered about it straight away. If you read the list, it reads pretty good, like magic damage reduced, 6 to dex, yeah, that's fine, 15 to stamina, very good. That's like completely ridiculously mundane, but it helps at the start of the game. This is an early game Runeword, so that's actually quite important. Poison resist, also important. Regenerate mana is nice to start out with. And of course, then comes the big stuff. Faster run walk, alright, yeah, faster run walk, but then faster cast rate. Just imagine this Runeword with a switched out stat of faster cast rate being switched out to faster attack rate, which is the equivalent we are talking about here, right? That's the equivalent. That's the same thing, but for melee characters. That would be overpowered as fuck. This is crazy, right? So there's something wrong here. A faster cast rate, that is too powerful to have on there. Faster hit recovery, alright. You start out with very little faster hit recovery gear, so I can get that, but 25 seems quite high, considering what you would find otherwise. So let's take a quick look at how I would change this one to make it work a little better, but still as intended. Just let me give you a quick note about what the colors are. The light blue is changed stats, and the orange are stats which naturally come from the runes that are put in there, while the blue stats are unchanged from the original. So I did change the dexterity bonus to +5, which equates 1 level up. I think that is fair. The +6 probably has some kind of balancing nuance, which I'm not quite aware of. So it might be a mistake to just reduce this. But I usually count the power of these things in level ups, and 5 stat points is equating to 1 level up. So let's give it 1 level up of dexterity. And we have, of course, the poison resist and the mana regeneration locked. But now the big change. I've completely removed the faster cast rate, because that is what makes it completely overpowered, but retained its character, which was the faster run walk and the faster hit recovery. It is a archetypal light armor. You put this in and you are moving faster, you have more dexterity, and you are somewhat protected from magic, but not really from physical damage. So I think that's a really good change, which would make it far less overpowered, but still very useful. Leaf is a very interesting case, and very powerful in the hands of a sorceress that focuses on fire spells. But not only that, of course, you can also use it as a druid, and you kinda have to, because of the +3 fire skills. Well, if you are a fissure druid or something, then this is definitely the way to go, and the +2 defense on it, also very neat. And +2 to mana after each kill, always worth it, and very much needed at the start of the game. This would be level 19, so that's early to mid Act 2. But overall, +3 to all skills, that seems a little odd to me. And then it's very, very much focused on the sorceress, even though there are so many others that have fire skills. Which is a shame, really. It's limiting itself more than it has to. So let's see how I thought of changing this one to be a little bit more versatile and a little less overpowered. Okay, so the fire damage remains on it, obviously, because that's from the Ral rune. I've reduced it to +2 to all fire skills, and then comes the change. It is +3 to Firebolt, remains, but +3 to Firestorm, Druid only. So it is more tailored to both classes which have a whole skill tree, or at least a partial one, that is dedicated to fire damage. I think that makes more sense that way. And then make the warmth +1 to warmth, but a general skill, so that the druid will have it too. The +2 to mana after each kill of course remains, as does the defense. I think that is an excellent addition. And cold resist just slightly dropped down to 30%. Still very, very powerful and very useful, but reduced in its effect, as you can only really use it effectively for Act 2, because it only really buffs your low-end skills, your level 1 skills, and then not the Inferno skill, as you did see there, even though that's barely used. It doesn't really need a nerf, I'm aware of that. But still, I think this overall is a fairer rendition of what Leaf set out to do in the first place. Zephyr is an interesting rune word. It is very powerful, very, very powerful. So I think it needs a little bit of a nerf here. It is very much the go-to bow, and you won't find anything that comes close to it otherwise. But yet I decided to not nerf it into the ground in my little rendition of it, but rather just tone it down slightly. And as you can see here, slightly less added damage. Keep the attack rating. Of course, the lightning is still, damage is still there. The defense reduced is still in there. Plus to the defense can stay in there because well, it doesn't really matter. You're not that affected by it. You could remove the +25 to defense to make it slightly less good. But that would be a nuanced change. And then I've reduced the faster run walk and the increased attack speed to 20% each. The twister is a nice nuance and flavor item on there. Not really significant, but of course flavor should stay, because flavor is what makes the game tasty. Ancient's Pledge is pretty easy to talk about. It is extremely powerful if you make it in Act 2. And you can start making it in Act 2 because, well, you easily get 4 Ral runes from the counters. That's really quick to do. I think you need something like 10-ish runs in order to do that. And that's with the tiny tower levels, that's really quick to achieve. So yeah, it is overpowered because the resistances are so high, but overall I doubt it needs to be nerfed much. So I reduced the resistances and made them slightly simpler, just a straight up resist all 40% and no other changes. The nice thing about the Ancient's Pledge is that it is not favoring any kind of archetype. It is very good for casters as well as for melee characters. Alright, that was the first set. Now let's have a quick look at the second set of Runewords that are available to characters early on. And, well, you say instantly seeing this, holy thunder, no, that's not available early on. Yeah, well, the runes are, but definitely not the item to harbor the rune word. So that's kind of nonsense, Killer Rob. Why did you take this one along? I don't really think it has a good place for such basic runes. It should be something that you can get earlier, or at least I think there need to be a few more early viable rune words to mix up the whole thing. And thus I decided to remove Holy Thunder and completely replace it with my own rune word, which kinda accomplishes a similar thing, but I think a little bit better. So check this out. Torch. It has a different set of runes, and it is for 3-socket pole arms only. So it is El Ralith. Well, +9 minimum damage to fire damage, and the attack rating comes from the runes put in there. That in itself, pretty powerful already. Just a 30% enhanced damage, and then we have plus 20 to life because it is a two-handed weapon very early on in the game, and that usually means that characters that try to use two-handed weapons early on in the game are really fragile usually. So I think plus 20 to life will help early on characters quite a lot. And especially the cold resist as well, because this would be a weapon you would be using against Duriel, and cold resist always is welcome there. And then we have plus 3 to Holy Fire instead of Holy Shock, because in normal difficulty that is actually useful. And if you are a paladin that focuses on Holy Fire and you want to do something unorthodox and go with a polearm, this might be making it viable to go with such a thing, and thus increase your options instead of disregarding them. And then we have plus 5 to light radius, just because it's very topical, because I called it Torch, and there was the plus 1 to light radius from the L rune anyway. So what does this Runeword accomplish? Well, I think it gives players the option to make something very decent in a two-handed weapon, not something overpowered, but something that is viable and brings them into Act 5 if they want to. Probably they will be getting something of similar damage, something faster especially. I deliberately didn't put any increased attack speed on here, especially considering that there's Holy Fire on it. And then we have the Trouble Child, Nadir. Oh my, oh my. This is probably one of the weakest rune words you can go for, and it's considered by quite a few people to just be useless. Why is it even there? So I took that to heart and thought, like, how can you make this one actually viable beyond Act 2? which is a shame, really, right? Act 2 normal. Like throwing away your first rune words, that's a little early, I would say. So I considered taking away some of the negative multipliers here, the minus to extra gold and minus very light radius, even though that's very topical. That fits the name, but I'll be getting back to that a little later. And I think we can fix it pretty easily by just giving it some more enhanced defense and making it a different archetype, or like when you look at the Nadir Runeword, just straight up, you think like, whom is this made for? It's like it doesn't serve any particular purpose. It doesn't do anything well. And that's a shame. So I changed this one to become, as in my overview, a melee character helmet. So it has higher enhanced defense, which helps melee characters. It has the same flat bonus to defense. It of course gets the standard modifiers from the runes, which is defense against missiles and plus 2 to mana after each kill. And then I've buffed the strength bonus to plus 10 2 level ups, which is a significant buff, because early on in the game this will allow melee characters to wear heavier armor and to wear more difficult to reach weaponry. And I think that is a significant buff in of itself. And then I've added magic damage reduced by 2. And that will become the topical thing, Nadir. But as I said, more about that later. And then there is Steel. Supposedly, at some point, the first rune word you would ever make. Nowadays, because of the Countess drop distributions, no longer the case, because L is the second most rare rune in the tower. And that's unfortunate. But it is a good rune word still, and I think we can change it up slightly and make it more interesting that way. And that would be accomplished, as you saw here. Let me show that to you again. There's more than just the stats changed. Instead of tier L, we changed it to tier F. And that makes possible that you can actually get it earlier, which it is intended for, right? So with that comes a few changes, and I don't think Steel as such fits the two sockets, swords, axes and maces, but rather is more a thing of swords and axes. So I've removed the maces from there. And also some changes here, because there are new runes. It gets -25 to target defense and +2 mana after each kill, both very important for early skill users so that they can continue to use their skills and actually start having fun in the game instead of just hoarding mana potions. So yeah, and I've switched out the open wounds with 25% deadly strike, and I've decreased the increased attack speed to 20%. I think overall this will make the Runeword more accessible and thus a lot more fun to play with, but still not overpowered, because you won't be seeing massive damage numbers out of this. Even though deadly strike means twice the damage, it's just 25% of the cases. And then there is a crowd favorite. Malice is an awesome rune word, and I don't think it needs much changing, because it is so awesome. It has that pesky L rune in it, which means that it is a little harder to obtain, and I think that should remain the case, because it is a rather versatile rune word as is, so it should be slightly harder to get. And yeah, the only thing that has changed here is to drop the defense, minus monster defense per hit to 50 instead of 100. And I think that was slightly overpowered before, because even nightmare bosses would have 0 defense in just 5 to 10 hits. And that's quite powerful, let's face it. So slightly reduced, but still extremely viable and an awesome rune word to use. If we take a quick look at the overview once again, you did spot that I just declared that there are some holes in here which need filling. One of these holes has been filled by the torch rune word I switched out the Holy Thunder with, and that has filled the two-handed melee weapon slot. So now we have something viable there, but there are 3 more slots that wait to be filled. So let's get into the final set of runewords, of basic starter runewords, which I want to discuss. So here they are. One which you already see, the nadir, is just one because I wanted to talk about it again. Nadir is an astronomical term, well, not only an astronomical term, but yeah, you get the meaning. So it basically means it's a dark place, right? Because that means that basically the sun is right underneath you, and there's no sunlight coming. So that means dark. And the darkness, I thought, could also mean that you need strength in order to get out of there. Magic or blissful thinking won't do that. So this one is the melee character version of a helmet, and then we have another version of it, Zenith, which is the opposite of Nadir, which is a caster helmet instead. And instead of using Nef tier, it is using If tier. Let's have a look at the stats, and we see that, okay, it provides far less defense, but a higher flat bonus, because on average, casters won't be investing so much into strength, so they won't benefit from the high enhanced defense, but rather from a flat bonus. Also, I chose the If rune because that gives casters the opportunity to salvage some of the health lost and put it into their mana, which usually at the start of the game is very low. And the +2 to mana after each kill, of course, is the same, but then instead of +10 to strength, and according to the flavor I want to assign here with Nadir vs Zenith, it has +10 to energy. And then as a final stat, damage reduced by 3 instead of magic damage reduced by 3. You can see the mirror image here, basically. I think this makes a lot of sense and adds some good flavor to it. Another thing you noticed missing in my overview was that there's no real melee armor as soon as stealth has been nerfed, because that was just too good, right? It was too good! Too good. It was so good that even though it was a ranged character or caster armor, it was good for melee characters too. And that shouldn't really be the case. So here we have our dedicated melee armor, and it's called Rock, because it's awesome. It's Nef F. So it is... Oh shit, I actually made a mistake here. this should be level 15 because of the F rune. So forgive that mistake. But you probably know the Runeword stone, which is much further down the line, and this could be seen as a mini stone, so to say. It's pretty good. So you have plus 70 enhanced defense, regenerate mana, the plus 30 defense versus missiles, and I add on top of it faster hit recovery and another plus 5 to strength. So yeah, in combination with the Nadir, which you see has the same Nef rune, and that is deliberate. That is deliberate because that means you can't have both at the same time as easily as you would normally. So very deliberate choice there to use 2 Nefs in order to make the full set. And I think they go very well together. And this would be an excellent Runeword to craft as soon as you hit Act 2 and can buy 2 socketed splint mails, for instance. That would be a great one to put in there. Although very basic, there's not much on it that you will want to keep for a long time. There are no resistances on there, for instance, which will become much more important in Act 4 and 5 of the game. And that is also deliberate. These are the starter Runewords. These are supposed to help new players get in or help just build up your character. And then we have the last one, and this is basically just a little bonus. It's a little throw to the necromancers, which have not gotten much love here, and it's very simple. Look at this. If you just put an Eld rune into a dagger, like very early on, in case you find one. An Eld rune is the least common rune from the tower. So yeah, this will be a little hard to find unless you are lucky. But if you're lucky, you can make for your necromancer a decent-ish wand replacement. It has plus 2 to skeleton mastery, plus 2 to poison dagger, which could be interesting, and prevent monster heal. And poison dagger really isn't that overpowered because it uses so damn much mana. Ah yes, but combined with a zenith, for instance, that would be kinda nice. Yeah, I think so. Alright, and I think that wraps us up here. Let's take a look at the overview. So overall, we have filled out all the remaining slots, which I thought were kind of missing here. And that would be Torch as the new melee two-handed weapon for polearms, and then we have Elder, and that is the special weapon, just a little flavor weapon basically. And we have now an archetypal melee armor, which is Rock Nef F. And we have Zenith, the counterpart to Nadir, which now is a competent melee character helmet. Alright, well that was the first and potentially last part of this little series. I don't know, I would be comfortable doing another one of these for like early mid-game Runewords. That would be interesting because there is a lot more choice there when it comes to runes, and also builds diverge at that point, which makes the game a lot more interesting. If you enjoyed that, please like and subscribe, and I see you guys next time.